One of the most common comments that I get from women on my videos is how unfair it is of me to generalize women. How it's just plain wrong, misogynistic even, to blame all women based on the actions of a toxic few. Well, ladies, to you I say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, because the reason I do it is in the interests of equality. And that is why you get so upset, because I actually treat you equally. I apply the very same standards to women that you apply to men. Kinda like this one does.
But this is the problem. It's not the actions of the few. You need to reverse that statement. It is the actions of most men. Most men. There are very few that do not act this way.
Like I said earlier, what I do is apply the same standards to women, the very same standards that they apply to men. So when y'all get upset that I do that, when there's millions of women out there, including this woman, and most likely yourselves, making sweeping generalizations and proclamations about men, it's a bit, shall we say, disingenuous, don't you think? And let's get into what she's talking about here, which is how women have to assume all men are dangerous, that they should all be considered a threat. Not based on anything they've done, but simply because they happen to be born male. You know, that whole it's all men till it's no men thing you've been spouting for decades now. She, like most of today's modern women, literally believes that all men, not just some, not just a few, but all men, commit heinous crimes against women. And of course, these are the very same women who complain about me when I talk about them. The ones who lose their minds when I apply those very same generalizations and beliefs to women as they've done to men. Add to it, they often go to great lengths to deny, minimize, or even justify the heinous actions of women against not just men, but children as well. They'll claim things like they didn't happen, or it's rare, or it's not her fault because meh, hormone. Or the infamous one they love to throw at men who are being abused, he must have done something to deserve it. It's something I see and hear every single day, as do most men, and it shows the complete and utter hypocrisy of their and the entire feminist movement's arguments. Oh, but she doesn't just stop there. Oh no, my friends, she continues on.
You have the privilege of being a man in this world.
Well, darling, I hate to break it to you and all the other women out there, but you have even more privilege as a woman. In fact, it's far more privilege than any man does. And I've talked about this often and listed examples before, but just one of the obvious ones is that you as a woman have the unconditional right to vote. Men, not so much, because their right to vote is conditional. Conditioned on them signing up for selective service, something women don't have to do and never have had to do. And let's not forget his right to get things like college loans, government jobs, and a few other things are also conditioned on him signing up to possibly be drafted. Funny how that inequality never makes its way into the feminist arguments. And that's just one of dozens I could and have listed.
We have the lived experience every single day since we are young women dealing with men like this. You will never in your lifetime feel safe as a woman as long as there are men in the world like this. And there are so many of them. They are everywhere. And comments like that just keep them in that cycle of never learning from their behavior.
Ah, yes, the other classic feminist argument. Well, tell me, darling, exactly how is it different for men? Why should men ever feel safe around any woman, and in particular a woman such as yourself who espouses these type of beliefs? Because you see, no woman is more dangerous to a man than a woman who goes around stating her belief that men, all men, are inherently dangerous, especially when the facts and data show otherwise. These are the type of women whose anger, misandry, and sexist beliefs cloud their ability to have reason and judgment, which means they'll be likely to interpret any action, even the most innocuous, done by a man, as threatening or dangerous, which then, of course, leads them to filing claims of harassment and worse. And as she pointed out, People like that stay in that cycle. They never learn from their behavior, which is why her argument justifying women's generalizations and beliefs towards men applies just as much to how men should view and generalize women. All women.
There are many wonderful men in this world. I'm engaged to one, but those are very hard to find.
This is straight out of one of my Did You Ever Notice videos. You know, like, did you ever notice how women will say it's all men till it's no men? With the exception, of course, of the man that's in their life. And it's almost universal how these women make exceptions for that man in their life, the one that they supposedly love, yet have no problem whatsoever stating as fact, at least in their mind, that the men in every other woman's life is dangerous. The lack of logic and even the most basic understanding of it simply doesn't compute. So blinded are they by their beliefs and their misandry.
Men telling me not to speak about something that they have never experienced or will never experience is such a typical man behavior.
Huh. And it's not typical woman behavior as well? More so even? Child, please. Sorry, darling, but once again, your double standards and hypocrisy, and that of all of feminism, are on full display.
My partner, the most beautiful, incredible, strong, masculine, but gentle and sensitive man, would never in a million years say to me when I tell him a story like that, oh babe, like don't say it's all men, like we're not all like that. No, because he's on my side, because he knows and he hears me and he listens to me when I tell him these stories.
Oh my, talk about the red flags, huh? See what she just did there? She put it out there that her man would never say it's not all men, which means by definition, he would then have to believe that he is one of those men. Again, it's just her way of justifying her hatred towards all men, while at the same time being able to have a man in her life, because indeed, if it is all men, as she's stated over and over, then the only prudent, logical thing to do is avoid men. All men at all costs. To never interact with them, never speak to them, never, God forbid, be in a relationship with them. Because, well, they're dangerous. But see, that doesn't work for her. So she looks for those exceptions so she can play both sides. And what's really going on here is he may not say that he doesn't believe that it's unfair to generalize all men, because he's likely living in fear of what she'll do to him if he does. Again, he probably isn't saying it, but I'd bet my bottom dollar he's thinking it. And as I said, he may listen, but he's never, and I do mean never, going to speak his mind or have his own opinion, because she doesn't allow him to.
He knows that men are like this because they are, and it's the majority of them.
And if that's the case, then it's fair to say it's all women. That's right, all. Or if you prefer, we'll just simply say the majority of them. The overwhelming majority of them. And that's why it's fair to say that women as a group should be viewed as inherently dangerous, to be avoided at all costs, because of how they think about and view men. Men need to understand that every woman, every single one of them, is capable of doing heinous things to men, or literally making up false allegations about men to justify their beliefs and actions. As I said earlier, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? I mean, you do believe in equality, don't you?
That's why so many women are killed at the hands of men. Like, we're not making this up.
Actually, darling, you are. You are making it up. And the data which proves it is easily found with the most basic and simple of Google searches. For example, in the United States in 2022, as reported by many sources, the data shows that 2,410 women were unalived by men in the United States. A tragic figure, to be sure, one that is far too high. But when you compare it to the fact that there's over 150 million women in the United States, it shows that statistically speaking, it's a very small number of women who are unalived by men. But going further, it begs the question, which is how many men were murdered by women? Funny how you don't want to have that data be part of the debate or conversation. Oh, I know you'll argue it's a lower number, and if we're being fair, you'd be correct. Though if we're also being reasonable and fair, it means we also have to take into account the absolute fact that the data doesn't tell the entire story. This is due to the fact that law enforcement biases lead to far fewer women being charged or convicted, even with substantial evidence, something that's been shown time and again, and something that feminists refuse to even acknowledge. But getting back to the point at hand, the fact is, it's not a small number. It's actually pretty significant. And it's certainly not zero, which means it makes it perfectly justified for men to make the same assumptions of how dangerous women are towards them that women make about men.
It's this stupid gaslighting thing that men are so good at doing.
Oh, the projection. The irony, of course, being that her entire video is designed to do one thing, and one thing only: gaslight men. And if we're going to be talking about gaslighting, well, darling, I hate to break it to you once again, but men's ability to gaslight women pales in comparison to how women, and in particular feminist women, gaslight not just men, but other women. Just saying.
How about you take that energy and mansplain to other men how to be better men?
And yet another double standard and hypocrisy of today's modern women. So let me say this to you, darling. How about you take all of your energy and femsplain not just to other women, but yourself, how to be better women? I know, that's not being fair, right? It's not fair to judge you and all women that way, and yet here we are. I'll repeat myself once again for those in the back. Until women stop generalizing men like this, until they stop screaming, it's all men, it's only fair to apply their standards, the very ones they demand they be allowed to push about men, to them. Because every argument she makes, every single claim she's put out there applies every bit as much to women as it does men. And in most cases, even more.